Throughout Dune 2, one of the most significant themes was faith. The Fremen group shared a tribal belief that a human written prophecy heralded the return of a superhuman but humble messiah that would come to save them from otherworldly oppressors. And Paul successfully hijacked these prophecies that were laid down by his mother and his mother's institution years before amongst the tribes, and politically completely hijacked them and found himself leading a vast semi-suicidal army of jihadists in a risky war to get revenge on the emperor for betraying his family and killing his own father, Paul. Now, that leads to some questions. For example, what is faith? My definition is that faith is a human rejection of death, and it usually takes on about two general forms. Form A is the narcissistic presumption that the self is just way too important to be here for no reason at all. Rather, there must be a cause for everything, except for the thing that caused everything, so therein lies the paradox of their thinking. But in order to self-prescribe some all-important meaning to every little thing that one does, many people just can't lose on to the fact that they've latched onto, that they just can't picture life or a world or themselves as not being specifically made and molded by something super powerful that wanted them to do specific things in a specific way with specific rituals and rain dances and everything, and that there must be some significant reason that makes them special. All right, that's one of the main general lines I've seen from this, and a lot of honestly most religious people fall into this category. People who just believe, despite all the other billions of religions that exist and belief systems and faiths and everything, and the lines between theism and deism and atheism and agnosticism and atheism are all kind of blurry. But in general, most people who don't even study this stuff on a very deep level at all want to believe that they are special and important and they matter and they're here to do something specific and they're supposed to have some sort of part two also, that they are so special and important that there couldn't possibly be an ending to that. They have to continue on indefinitely forever. And all of reality and non-reality and dimensions and universe needs them around and needs them to keep going for absolutely ever. And on the B side of this, the other general wing of faith that I've noted, it seems to be more of a desperation, so a bit of a Pascal's wager, if you will. It's the fear-driven hope that surely all of this misery and suffering and the terrible realities of the world and reality itself have to have a good reason, and there's going to be some sort of cosmic justice that's going to happen at some point in the future that apparently does not include when the sun will burn out and die, or when the Andromeda Galaxy will collide into our Milky Way galaxy and destroy most of what is here, at least the way we know it. It would definitely destroy all life. But by the most commonly accepted definition, faith is a belief in something without any evidence. That's just the simplest way to put it. So if you believe in Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, or that the earth is flat, congratulations, you are practicing faith. Many people are hyper defensive about their faith, and for a lot of people, no amount of evidence in any way, shape, or form can alter or sway their beliefs, because they are either so convinced that if it's written in a book, it must be true, no matter who the author was or when it was written or what purpose it was written for, or whether or not we have the original copies. In most cases, we don't. but if it's written in the book, it must be true. So Ken Ham kind of falls into this category. So he believes that people lived with dinosaurs because he must believe that Earth is only about 5 to 6 thousand years old. Otherwise, his book doesn't make any sense. So he honestly has a duty, and he makes money lying about people's words, their works, their writings, their discoveries, their papers, their theses, their data. He makes a living lying to children and families about the reality of the world around them, about scientific discoveries, and about objective reality. And most people like this see any kind of question, even, or just any observation, as an attack on their faith. It's a hyper defense mechanism. So, any questions about their faith or evidence to the contrary will usually lead to them saying things like, that's an attack on my faith, or what, so I'm supposed to just shut up about my faith now because there's no evidence for it, and there's lots of evidence that my religion lied to me about science and history? I don't think so, buddy. And most of this conflict bubbles to the surface throughout Dune 2, and it's most of the impetus for the action and the character developments. Um, Honestly, the biggest antagonist of the story, as written in the book by Frank Herbert, was cleverly designed to hook people into a slight sympathy for Paul and his family and the betrayal. But the ultimate antagonist of this story, make no mistake about it, was always Paul Atreides, and the monster he becomes as he exploits made-up religious doctrine amongst desert tribes who are superstitious and easily swayed, especially by a technology that they can't understand yet. They see it as magic. And it kind of ruins so many expectations that people had, especially probably fans of Timothée Chalamet, where they expected him to be the pretty boy, and they expected him to be the hero and the Luke Skywalker of the story. But they're slowly watching him become a televangelist in the desert type thing, and they're watching him become a radical zealot influencer who convinces a bunch of religious crazy people to go and murder the army of the Emperor when he comes, help him murder the Harkonnens, and help him take the throne of the entire empire for himself, and betray even his most dearly beloved along the way in order to do so, and take someone else's hand in marriage, basically stealing the Emperor's daughter and his throne, and probably his life. But the way that it was shot by Greg Fraser and the cinematographer was absolutely phenomenal. It's like he's taken everything he learned from Dune and just ratcheting it up to double speed, because it looks and sounds even more in depth and incredible, and the lighting was just unbelievable, and the way he was able to capture the shadows of the desert and somehow avoid, at least any noticeable, in my opinion, continuity errors that often occur in shoots like these, where if you're outdoors and the sun is going to be in wildly different places throughout your different shooting days, and even if you're filming the same scene. So the uniformity of what the environment was supposed to look like and the attention to detail was phenomenal, and it looked gorgeous. He's really been cutting his teeth. He invented the 360 technology that the Disney Plus shows use for Star Wars, and he really was probably the main reason that Matt Reeves' Batman movie was able to film despite COVID, because so many of his sets and city skyscrapes, skylines, they were made with a digital technology that allowed the production to use fewer green screens, but also achieve either the same or better desired effects. And it really made the city feel like it was living and breathing and moving, and truly part of the events and reacting to all the blows that it was taking from the Riddler and all the corruption in the city. Well, I'm getting all sidetracked there, going down the rabbit holes, but the real question is, what does all of this say about Paul and about his status in the story as a protagonist? And I think one of the biggest things to think about is his powers of premonition are probably one of the biggest indicators that he is a massively horrendous psychopath, because he has the ability to see exactly how much his choices will affect the world around him and the people around him. And the fact that throughout both films, he knows and says what is coming if he ends up going through certain patterns of events or making certain choices. He knows that war is inevitable, a holy war with billions dead, all that blood on his hands. And yet, knowing what he knew, he still made the decision to serve his interests and to get the absolute fastest possible avenue towards revenge realized with all of the new zealots that he has acquired in the desert. And part of the problem here is that there's most likely going to be some kind of Bundy effect going on here, where we have Beauty Queen Chalamet playing him. So, how many people are actually going to end up defending this character and what he does? Like, oh, he's too pretty to commit a crime, sort of effect. It'll be very fun to see. And with the music, it was kind of strange because the score for the first film was incredibly unique and fascinating, and there were 3 different albums just to cover all of the music that Hans Zimmer had made for Dune and everything that he experimented with in his discovery of the sound of Arrakis and the Harkonnens and all the other planets that are in the Dune lore and all the character themes he wanted to put together. And in the second one, it seemed like a lot of the music was mostly just reused themes from the first film that were on those albums, or just continuation of themes, or just renamed of the same music, because most of the music in the second film either seemed more ambient or it just wasn't even new, or mostly just wasn't there. I'm hoping for the third one to hear some new themes and a little more complexity. But overall, too, the film, I honestly feel like the first one was a little bit more enjoyable. I feel like the world building was a bit more solid, and the characters were a little bit more easy to sympathize with in the first film. And the second one felt a little bit like some events were brushed over that the book covered that I think would be massively important to understanding the story as a whole, and some creative liberties taken from the book over to the film didn't quite resonate with me as well as I hoped they would. And I didn't expect it to be identical, obviously, but there were some things that I was hoping to see and some explanations that could have been used in a couple places. And I would have liked to see a little bit more of the Emperor and his daughter. There were only a couple scenes with them before they end up having their huge ending, where Paul ends up basically stealing the hand of the Emperor's daughter after killing the Harkonnen. And to put a bow on it, I think that one of the most masterful effects of this film was the way that they portrayed the blind faith of the Fremen tribes, but also how split in nature they were, where there were some dissonance. Most of them were the non-superstitious, the more practical thinkers. There were people that didn't believe in all the stories that were told to them by outsiders about their own land and culture, and how some outsider's going to come and play like the white savior role for them. And while most of them believed it, there were small subsections that did not, and the more critical thinkers were ostracized in a large part from some of the activities of the tribes based on their appeals to reason and general disbelief of the outsider stories that were being woven by the Bene Gesserit sisters. This one I give an 8 out of 10. It was just a tad bit underwhelming in some of those big giant moments that were really promised to be a bit more of a spectacle and a little bit more in depth, but it was very solid and it was a great sequel. Not very many of those anymore these days, so it was refreshing to see. But overall, I think it was a pretty solid 8 out of 10. Not quite as good as the 9 out of 10 first one, but still a very good film nonetheless, especially with the general quality of most films that have been coming out the past couple of years. So it was very good. So to anyone out there who's still listening, thank you. It's always great to have you guys. It's for however long this gets to go on. It's always nice to just kick back, talk about films. So thanks a lot for listening and downloading and enjoying. And go ahead and share this with your friends if you want to talk more about films and discuss what might happen in Messiah. Yep, I'm around. You know where to find me. So cheers.